I now wish to invite the Honorable MG Buthelezi to the podium.
The Honorable Speaker, Kamela, Your Excellency, our President, Sholozi, Your Excellency, Deputy President, Nkulua, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, I rise to speak with a sense of distress, of utter distress. As hard as I try to hear something in our President's State of the Nation address that will restore my confidence in the current leadership of our nation, I found nothing on which to pin my hopes. What I had in the State of the Nation address were aspirations and dreams. What I did not hear are time frames, strategies, or anything for which we could hold our President's administration accountable in this last year of the fourth democratic parliament. Indeed, Your Excellency, I doubt whether anything you spoke of last Thursday will come to fruition in the lifetime of your presidency, or perhaps even in your lifetime, let alone in the lifetime of my brother, Mr. Mlangen, and myself. I say this with respect, but with utter distress. I look for something last Thursday on which to pin my hopes, because I remember how hope actually sustained us and sustained our liberation struggle. Even in the darkest nights, we retained hope of eventual freedom, and that hope kept our cause alive. Without hope, the future can no longer be imagined or pursued. For the first time in my life, I worry that our nation's future is darkening as inch by inch we drift further away from hope. Last November, the Inkatha Freedom Party stood in solidarity with opposition parties in this parliament as we tabled a motion of no confidence in our president. That motion was driven by the shared understanding that the divide between the ruling party and the opposition in South Africa is no longer purely a difference in ideology, perspective, or opinion. It is a fundamental difference in values, the values which we believe in as the opposition, the very values which are held dear in our society have been abandoned by the ANC as our ruling party. These abandoned values are values of Dr. Pixlika Isakaseme, Dr. John Dube, Ms. Makhato, Reverend Mahabane, Dr. Moroka, Inkos Albert Lutuli, and other prominent past leaders of the ANC. Now, however, the ANC believes the state is there to be pillaged, abused, and disrespected for self-enrichment of the ruling class. The rest of us believe that the state is an instrument to serve the people of South Africa, to meet the needs, the wants, and aspirations of our people. There is a fundamental divide between the ruling party and the people of South Africa, and that divide is growing. The President referred to the vast number of comments he had seen from South Africans on Facebook and Twitter. He is right that South Africans have a great deal to say. We have much to contribute. But how many of those comments express concern, frustration, and anger? The IFP invited South Africans to comment on Facebook during the State of the Nation address and to express their own opinion on whether our President is telling it like it is or not. And they spoke, not just on Facebook, but across the broad spectrum of social media. Someone calling himself Sam Nujoma said, and I quote, "Zuma lives in his own world and expects us to believe him," unquote. Someone calling himself Unati Fiti said, and I quote, "Yet another empty promise from our president," unquote. Someone calling himself Anton Pillay said, and I quote, "All the promises you made before you got elected they ain't come true, unquote. These few comments reflect the overwhelming public opinion that the President's address does not describe the state of our nation. The real state of our nation is expressed in the cry of more than 1 million young people who sit without work, while the President asks the private sector to absorb only 11,000 FET graduates. The real state of the nation is expressed in the children who sat without textbooks for more than half a year, while the President asked the private sector to fund maths and science academies and Saturday schools. The real state of our nation is very different to what the President describes. I've said before, I cannot work in harmony with a President who is perceived by some people to be speaking from both sides of his mouth. Mr. President, you seem to speak from both sides of your mouth. What daring to speak about the Bill of Rights as you did, when you yourself are compromised on this issue, when you say, Mshinwam, Mshinwam, you allow the slogan, kill the poor, kill the farmer. We have stood in this House, sir, and declared quite without any qualms that the minority has fewer rights than the majority. Where is your constitution, Your Excellency? Please show me where that hallowed document grants some citizens more rights than others. I've said many times, even before Polokwane, that I do not see the President as merely the President of the ANC. He is our head of state. He is my President too. I have no other head of state. I thus afford him the respect he deserves. I wonder, though, why the President seems not to respect me just as a citizen. I've written to him many times and received nothing more than the acknowledgement of receipt from his staff. How should I interpret the fact that my latest letter was not even acknowledged? And that letter, Mr. Speaker, informed the President of my own reasons for joining the motion of no confidence. And I felt that my President should know why I no longer have confidence in his leadership. I'm not standing in this House merely to attack him or even to criticize for the sake of criticizing what his government has done. I'm standing here as a citizen who has lost hope and lost confidence and who sees no way for us to continue on this path. The time has come to close the First Republic under the ANC, which is characterized by corruption, lack of vision, and lack of leadership. The time has come to usher in a second and better republic the dedicated people and values of our liberation. Our President has used the expression that one must cut the coat according to the cloth in his speech. As someone with many years of experience in governance, I know what he means. You cannot, in fact, only work rather with what you have. That's what the President meant. And no one expects the President to do more for the country than what can realistically be done with the resources of the government at his disposal. But we all know that the resources of government are enormous, and the budget allocations are generous to address key issues like education, poverty, inequality, and health care. It is not for lack of throwing money at our problems that we flounder. Our President also made it clear that what is happening globally is bound to affect us. But even within these two confines of limited cloth and the global economic meltdown, one cannot escape the truth that this government has wasted money. It has wasted the resources available to it. What has been promised has not been delivered, and corruption has darkened the soul of our government. To my mind, the President has lost his credibility to speak of external challenges. For 3 years I've said in this debate that the IFP will support this government where this government does the right thing, and I will support the President when the President does the right thing. Thus, I will not stand here, honorable members, and say that government has done nothing for our people. That will be dishonest. I was in government for 10 years, and I know what we did for this country. Even from the opposition benches, the IFP has seen this government do some things for the people, but not enough things, not quickly enough, not with the kind of commitment that reality demands. Instead, resources have been frittered away at every level of government, in national government, provincial administrations and municipalities. Performance is so poor and delivery so slow that I've lost hope of us ever coming close to addressing South Africa's problem successfully. I no longer believe that the vast sums of money set aside to address specific problems will actually reach those problems. So even the amounts the President quoted for infrastructure development are meaningless if there's no guarantee that they'll reach, serve the purpose for which they are set aside for. In spite of all these countermeasures, the President mentioned corruption, that corruption is endemic. He mentioned that, in all honesty. But there's no visible improvement in corruption. Why should we be impressed that the government has now decided that accounting officers should face consequences for non-compliance with accountability measures? Why have there been no consequences before? Euphemisms and hyperbolic catchphrases will do nothing to solve genuine problems. The President told us that in 2008, government declared education as an apex priority. While education was an apex priority, teachers were allowed to strike, textbooks were dumped in Limpopo, learners entered high school functionally illiterate, pass rates were dismal, and thousands of learners simply dropped out. So now we are changing the name apex priority as though the name had anything to do with the problem. Now we are calling education an essential service. But just to clarify that, that doesn't mean teachers can't strike. It simply means, well, actually, Your Excellency, what does it mean? Giving the problem a new title will not solve the problem. It is insulting for His Excellency to say, quote, we want society to take education more seriously, and quote, we want everyone in the country to realize that education is an essential service. Sir, with due respect, we do take education seriously. We know that it's an essential service. The people of this country have been begging for solutions for our failing education system. The only one that has not been taking this seriously, the only person, is the government. It is also insulting to the people of this country to say that the annual national assessments have become a powerful tool of assessing our education system without having the honesty to say that the assessments have left us in a shock over how dismally our schools are performing. Study after study, report after report, South African education system is proven to be worsening, in fact. Let's have the honesty to say just so many words. Let's also have the honesty to say that 102 billion that has been spent on consultants in the past 3 years points to a civil service that has no idea how to do its job. Apparently, over the last 19 years, no progress has been made in building a civil service that knows how to govern effectively, efficiently, or at all. Yet when governance at all levels dismally fails, when money is rolled over and not spent, when corruption takes our service delivery, national government steps in. The interventions in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape indicate the extent of the problem, but such intervention is no panacea at all, as the President would have us believe. It is also blatantly untrue that when the state intervenes in private industry, it turns things around and creates success. In fact, the opposite is true. How many state-owned enterprises are prospering? South African Airways, I remember how much time, as a member of cabinet, how much we bailed out SAA. I know that this was a cabinet secret, but in this house you can say anything. Denel, for example. There is no evidence to suggest that government would do a better job running our mines than private companies. Even if after years of playing footsie with the idea of nationalization, the ruling party has abandoned this notion, the crisis in mining has not gone away. The President would have us believe that because of interministerial committee supposedly restored social stability in Marikana, and because a commission of inquiry was set up, all is now done and dusted and squared away, and there's nothing left to worry about. It is again an insulting euphemism to refer to Marikana and the violent strike that followed as, quote, difficulties, unquote, in the mining sector in the last few months. Has any calculation, I ask, been made of all that has been lost in the many protests and strikes that have swept our country? Has anyone calculated the cost of the looting of shops, the destruction of property, and the lost productivity? Has anyone calculated the cost of our national psyche, our social cohesion, and our trust in the rule of law? When I was in the high school, our principal explained that one man's right ends when another man's right begins. When property is destroyed during violent protests, the Bill of Rights is trampled. And when teachers are allowed to strike living learners without access to education, the Bill of Rights is trampled. Why then, Your Excellency, are you bowing to SADC, except for the obvious reason that you need their political support? I wonder how far we will get with the National Development Plan when COSATU has already compared it with gear. I had butterflies in my stomach when I read that. How long before we hear the resounding call, Asiyifuni NDP, Asiyifuni NDP? Mr. President, you cannot implement the NDP and please your alliance partner. One cannot help but wonder if the analysts are right, that very few in either the ANC or its alliance partners have read the 450-odd pages of the NDP. How many departments offered comments to the National Planning Commission on specific details of the NDP? The IFP submitted 20,000 words of the advice. We thus have no illusions about the NDP changing anything in our country in the next year or next 5 years. This is a 20-year vision populated with aspirations and goals. We fully support the NDP, but we realize it is not the band-aid the President would have us believe. There is no band-aid for the crisis in education, healthcare, unemployment, and poverty. The 126 million is set aside in the human resettlements budget for gap housing, but only 70 million is spent. The band-aid clearly didn't work. Let me offer His Excellency the President some words of advice. Your Excellency, don't expect the expanded public works program and the community work program to absorb all our unemployed youth. Don't insult those millions of young South Africans with the platitude, quote, working together will find a solution to youth unemployment, unquote. Don't expect South Africans to be silent as inflation robs them of food on their table and a roof over their heads. Don't think that the passing mention of rape and murder of women and girls in recent times, quote unquote, is enough to solve the scourge that has been plaguing our nation for decades. And don't drive wedges between our people by making it increasingly impossible for some segments of our society to do business, find jobs, and provide their families, all in the name of BBEE. Honorable Speaker, Your Excellency, now let me speak finally about the sanctity of human life. South Africa comes from a past of the People's War, of black-on-black bloodshed and political violence. How much has 19 years really changed? Even now we have intra-party and inter-party violence, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. We have rape and looting and rampant crime. With all the assurances that our police are gaining control, the situation appears to be out of hand. Perhaps we should look to the number of prisoners filling our prisons to capacity. Perhaps that would be the indication, a proper indication of whether we are winning this war or losing it. Marikana should remind us how easily things can get out of hand. Throughout the history of man, I mean Homo sapiens, the species Homo sapiens, there have been conflicts which result in war. Coming as we do from a past of war, we should be more concerned about political violence. Disdain for the sanctity of human life clearly still hangs over our heads. It seems some people have no qualms of conscience, no scruples either conscientious or religious about killing people for political reasons. I was hoping that you hear our President to pronounce on this matter. He and I come from different schools. Our president knows that when the ANC abandoned the values of its 1912 founding fathers, which I clung to, and embraced violence as a means to the end, that the IFP did not agree. In 1979, our parties met in London to discuss an armed struggle, and the ANC urged Inkatha to avail structures to bring bloodshed and violence into the country, and we refused. I upheld the sanctity of human life in every circumstance. Those who are saying, did I ask for amnesty? Mr. Mbeki and some of the leaders, including the president, asked for amnesty. I never asked for amnesty. So arrest me. I felt we should adopt a composite strategy in ending apartheid through negotiations, which was the dream of the 1912 founding fathers of the ANC. I never condemned the decision of the ANC to take up arms, and I understood the frustration that drove our liberation movements, ANC, PAC, and others, to take up arms. In fact, addressing a thousands-strong rally at Jabulani Amphitheatre in Soweto, I said, addressing thousands of young people, that they could go through the fence, for our border is very wide, I said, publicly. Cabinet then sent Minister Pete Kurnov to me to complain about what they understood to be my support for the armed struggle. But I've always believed in the sanctity of human life. My respect for life never diminished, no matter what happened throughout the People's War and afterwards. Thus, I never ordered, ratified, condoned, or authorized a single human rights violation. I think it is important that leaders themselves pronounce where they stand on these matters, for even today, political killings continue. The political violence of last year demands that the president of the ANC and the president of our country pronounces on the sanctity of human life and declare where he stands with regards to political violence. Our president has spoken about the people's right to life, but somehow this has no resonance given our history. One would want all our country's leaders to be able to say, quote, my hands are clean, my conscience is clear, unquote. Yes, there were lists before Mangaung of ANC people that had to be killed because they belonged to a certain faction, and some of our names were in that list. So, yes, with all your crowing, that is the truth. Those are the facts of the matter. South Africans wanted to hear last Thursday what this government is going to do to turn around things. Instead, we had nothing new. The State of the Nation address was, in this sense, deeply disappointing. It has caused me at last to lose hope, not in my beloved country, but in my president, whom I love and respect. It has given me no cause for renewed confidence, and I find myself leading my party to return to a motion of no confidence, which the leader of the opposition mentioned. And I'm not worried about the juvenile political games of the chief whip. The time is indeed here to close the door on this First Republic and to admit that through corruption, poor leadership, and a lack of vision, South Africa was placed on a path to destruction. Let us open now with the rising voice of a nation at odds with this government, the better Second Republic our people deserve. Let us set this country on the right course by doing what is needed, by unseating a leadership not fit to rule. Ngamalala, Sholos.
I thank the Honourable Speaker.